Anyone else need a huge glass of wine? Hey everyone, my name's Kayla and thanks so much for tuning in to Pages and Prosecco. I talk about a book and I pair a wine with it. What more could you want? Before I delve into today's book, I just want to take a few minutes to say that as much as I enjoy making these videos, we are currently living in a time where racial injustice is running rampant in our country. So I ask that you please take some time to educate yourselves on how you can help Black, Indigenous, and POC communities. I've included some organizations down below in the description box that I think are doing incredible work for Black lives. Please consider educating yourself on their missions and donate if you are able. Also, in the theme of my videos, I've listed a few books that I think are incredibly powerful and educational reads. And finally, please register to vote. So with that said, I don't know about you guys, but this year has got me wanting to pack up everything I own, put it on my back, and disappear into the wilderness. Anyone else? Anyone? So it's no wonder that I picked up Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. Now I've read this book before, but there was something extra powerful about rereading it
when life went ahead and pulled a 180.
This book definitely includes some situations that could be triggering for some readers. So be forewarned that it's not necessarily a casual read. However, I do believe this is a book everyone should read, especially women. It is real. It is heart-wrenching. It is emotional. But it's also funny and addictive and beautiful. It therapeutically rips you open, which ultimately makes you examine your own life and your choices. Ooh, get ready. The wine I've paired with this book is the Big Smooth Cabernet Sauvignon from Lodi, California. The vintage is 2017. And look at this label. I know you can't reach through the screen and feel it, but it's velvety smooth. Cabernet is a dry, full-bodied red wine. It generally has tasting notes of dark fruit, tobacco, oak, and graphite, like the lead of a pencil. Fitting, since Cheryl Strayed wrote this book by relying on her own personal journals. I also decided to go with a Californian Cabernet because the bulk of this book takes place in California. This particular Cabernet has a real depth of flavor. The term depth when we're talking about wine means that the wine reveals many different layers of flavor that evolve throughout the tasting experience. One of the main reasons I paired a Cabernet with Wild is because we encounter real depth. We read about the many different layers of the grief of one woman who's gone through some real shit and witnessed her unique evolution towards acceptance. Now, I think to experience the full effect of this book, it does require a read. So instead of doing a full recap, I'm going to discuss the premise and a few of my favorite moments. Wild is a biographical memoir that takes place in 1995. It is a full recount of Cheryl Strayed's life experiences between the ages of 22 and 26. At the very young age of 22, she loses her mother to cancer, and this devastating loss drives her into a complete downward spiral. During the 4 years following her mother's death, her family and siblings have scattered, she's divorced her husband, and has done anything and everything to try to escape her inner turmoil, including self-deprecating behavior, hard drugs, and meaningless sex. When she realizes she's hit rock bottom, a glimmer of hope finds her when she's in a bookstore and she picks up a guidebook entitled The Pacific Crest Trail, Volume 1, California. With nothing else to lose, she decides to hike over 1,000 miles of the PCT, starting in the Mojave Desert, all the way up California, through Oregon, and ending in Washington. And she decides to do it alone, without ever having backpacked before. Ever. I'm sorry, what? And so we meet Cheryl at the beginning of her hike in a motel room with everything that she'll need for the next 3 months packed into a huge backpack. On page 42, she writes, "I gripped it and bent to lift it. It wouldn't budge. It was exactly like attempting to lift a Volkswagen Beetle. It looked so cute, so ready to be lifted, and yet it was impossible to do so." Can you imagine? She has this grandiose idea of how to fix her life, and she can't even lift the damn pack. She finally figures out a way to get the pack on to where she can stand, or as she says, hunched in a remotely upright position, and walks out the door. Whew. Go ahead, girl. Okay, so remember that this book is set in 1995. She has no cell phone, no credit card, nothing for entertainment other than the few physical books that she's packed into her backpack, which now she's generously named Monster. Each night she rewards herself or entertains herself by reading. On page 105, she writes, "On the trail, books had taken on an even greater meaning. They were the world I could lose myself in, when the one I was actually in became too lonely or harsh or difficult to bear." Girl, who you telling? Escapism is real over here. Oh, it's so good. As the narrative continues, we follow Cheryl and her day-to-day struggles along with her own personal triumphs. And soon we meet some other ambitious individuals who are also hiking the PCT. It's interesting to read the excitement they have for each other. In a way, they're accomplishing something together, even though the trek itself is done alone. You know, it's your fellow kin, the joy of social interaction amidst a fairly isolating experience. Yeah, don't relate to that at all. Apart from her belongings kept within Monster, there are various checkpoints along the trail, hundreds of miles apart, where she has pre-mailed herself more trail food, supplies, and cash. These checkpoints usually have a small convenience center. On page 63, she says, "I thought of the resupply box that waited for me. Not so much the box, but the $20 bill that would be inside. And not so much the $20 bill, but what I could buy with it." It's funny, I'm trying to think of what I would want after hiking for miles with a giant backpack. A bed? A cheeseburger maybe? Probably an ice cold glass of wine. For Cheryl Strayed, it was Snapple lemonade. This did not make sense. I'd only had a few Snapple lemonades in my pre-PCT life and liked them well enough, but they hadn't stood out in any particular way. But now it haunted me. Pink or yellow, it didn't matter. Not a day passed that I didn't imagine in vivid detail what it would be like to hold one in my hand and bring it to my mouth. Ooh, frosty. So the narrative jumps back and forth. These flashbacks are so well placed, in my opinion, because they seem to coincide with her moments on the trail. She relates the difficulty of hiking the PCT to the most difficult moments of her past. Hiking the PCT was hard in a different way. In a way, it made the other hardest things the tiniest bit less hard. Damn. She also discusses why she changed her last name to Strayed after her divorce. The definition of the verb to stray means to wander, to become lost, to move about aimlessly, to become wild. She writes, "I didn't embrace the word as my new name because it defined negative aspects of my circumstances or life, but because even in my darkest days, those very days in which I was naming myself, I saw the power of the darkness, saw that in fact I had strayed, and that I was astray, and that from the wild places my straying had brought me, I knew things I couldn't have known before." Ooh. Hit me deep in my soul with that one. Overall, Cheryl Strayed's storytelling style. Wow, say that 5 times fast. Cheryl Strayed's storytelling style. Cheryl Strayed's storytelling. This author's storytelling style is suspenseful and emotional, but it's sprinkled with humor and wit, which I think is very truthful to how life actually is. So those are a few of my takeaways from the book Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. Go ahead and try this incredibly cathartic and empowering read. Your soul will appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm hoping to drop these videos once a month, so please follow Pages and Prosecco on YouTube and Instagram to stay up to date on when I'll be dropping a new video. Have you guys read Wild? Let me know your takeaways in the comments. Cheers! Happy reading! Had it for this exact reason. What? Fucking gnat. We follow Cheryl. It's emotional and damn it, suspenseful. Term, verb. I hate lemonade. Big Smooth. Cheryl Strayed's. God, I cannot say her name. I promise my next book recap will not have a movie version where Reese Witherspoon plays the title character.